Hello and welcome to Esri's Fire and Emergency Services webinar series. I'm Mike Cox, a Fire and EMS Industry Manager, and today we're lucky enough to have Chief Vaughn Miller to give us an overview of Ventura County's response to the Thomas Fire using GIS. It was one of the largest fires in California history, so we're very excited to have this case study presented for us. A few housekeeping items as we get started. Please use the chat window to ask any questions, and there will be 3 interactive poll questions. Please participate in that. That's our effort to collect needs from our users. A recording will be posted online after the webinar, and we'll send an email with associated links to any of the issues we referenced today. So again, today's webinar is Deputy Chief Vaughn Miller, Ventura County, California. Mike Cox, Fire and EMS Industry Manager from Esri, and we're joined by David Blankenship from Ventura Group. David and Ventura directly supported Ventura's response to the Thomas Fire. So we use these webinars as an effort to encourage the use of GIS in fire and public safety agencies. And we realize these agencies face challenges every day that are more complex and unpredictable. Issues like public health, mental health issues, opioid addiction, homelessness, things that, we weren't expecting years ago. So we have to be able to build efficiencies into these solutions. And so GIS is one way to do that without simply throwing more personnel and building more fire stations or putting more medics and fire trucks on the road. So we encourage the use of GIS as a way to provide safe working environments for our responders and a way to build efficiencies into our daily operations. So Chief Miller, I'm going to turn it over to you for an introduction.
Well, good morning. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. As the slide says, I've been with Ventura County for many, many years, and I've advanced through the ranks. I hold a Type 1 IC qualification and then a side degree in architecture, which is a passion of mine. But another passion of mine really has been GIS and situational awareness, to be specific. And I've been on this road to improve our situational awareness and our commander's view of fires in our jurisdiction for a long time, probably about 10 years. And I've been working with Ventura and others in the state to try to advance all of our capabilities. And so part of this presentation is going to be along those lines. I will cover the Thomas Fire and our methods to map, at least through the IA portion. CAL FIRE came in fairly early and took over incident management, or assisted us in incident management, and their SIT unit took over mapping early on in the fire, and that's a very traditional system. So I think you'll be very interested in how we do this, do our IA mapping. So that will be part of the presentation, and I'm just going to tell a little bit of the story of the Thomas Fire too, and some background on Ventura County for those of you who aren't familiar with us.
Thanks, Chief. And a little bit more about me. I'm, again, your Fire and EMS Industry Manager, and I'm essentially your liaison officer for GIS needs for the Fire and Emergency Medical Services. I recently retired as a Deputy Chief of Henrico County, Virginia, where I served as the Operations Chief for a number of years, and retired as the Deputy Chief of Community Risk Reduction. And the ability to use GIS for us for day-to-day operations and special events in response to significant events like disasters such as tornadoes and hurricanes, really struck me as a powerful way to communicate and provide that situational awareness to our responders. And that's really what it is to me. It's a communications platform. It's the ability to give significant incident intelligence to all of our stakeholders, regardless of where they're coming from, to help you. So to be able to coordinate multiple agencies on a significant response is an excellent use of GIS, an excellent use or excellent way to improve your response capabilities. And Dave, you want to give us an overview of yourself? I'm sorry.
Sure. David Blankenship. I work here at Ventura, and I've got about a 23-year career in GIS, coming out of public safety and Colorado Springs fire specifically. And I was just always thankful to the fire service in Colorado Springs in particular for sort of taking a computer nerd and ruggedizing me and training me and sending me to academies and schools and just incorporating me into all things operational and strategic. And so out of that and deploying many years to California and to wildfires and to other things around the country, I share the same passion for situational awareness and managing data in public safety that Mike has and Vaughn has as well. So in this role, I support these GIS and fire departments nationally to basically speed up the flow of information, to make information relevant to firefighters on the ground, to EMS personnel on the ground, and for strategic decision makers. So I'm the token computer nerd on the call, and I'm here for color commentary and any technical questions.
Excellent. Thank you, David. And I will say, Intera is a very strong partner with Esri in providing these products. So certainly, if you have any questions or interest after the webinar, we'll provide David's contact information as well. I always begin these webinars by mentioning or providing an overview of web GIS, and the evolution of GIS over the last few years has really provided the capability to the boots on the ground, where you have web-based applications that are simple to use, that has firefighters making maps in the fire station, easy to provide that common operating picture rapidly from any device, and as long as you have connectivity to be able to communicate it to any of the other responders. And again, it's places analytical and data collection tools in the hands of frontline responders. No longer necessarily rely solely on that GIS specialist or GIS professional, which obviously you still need that. Don't take that the wrong way, to have that GIS professional in the fire department, but to have the ability for the boots on the ground and the first responders to be able to make information products that they can share with their responding partners is incredibly powerful, and the ability to communicate that situational awareness or that common operating picture. And the field applications for data collection are improving almost daily, it seems like, but the ability to turn firefighters into human sensors and provide real-time data to the decision makers, to be able to provide not only points on a map, but pictures and video in real time back to a command post or back to an emergency operations center, is incredibly useful in developing that incident intelligence, or that size up of what's going on in real time. So a very effective way to support the mission, and to be able to wrap any kind of data into one view. So whatever data you can get a hold of that has that location reference, we can put into one view and filter it to the right person to make decisions, to get the right data to the right person at the right time. So with that, Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can begin your overview of the autonomous fire response and use of GIS.
All right, thanks, Mike. Oh boy, I already advanced the slide incorrectly. So before I begin, I just want to emphasize that this is it's really a team issue. This isn't a firefighter issue. We need to have really a group of folks involved in providing the best practice here. And I'm not saying that I feel that we have the best practice yet. So if you're an IT person, you're online, I need you to listen in and listen for clues where you can help us innovate, this forward. And if you're a GIS person, the same really goes for you. And if you're a firefighter, we need good feedback on what you need, your tools, the tools that you need on the ground. And so just listen to my presentation and feel free to type a question and engage us in some dialogue, because this is really it's a fire service issue. It's a fire service need, and we really want to go through this together. So with that, I will say that I'm feeling, as a leader in the California Fire Service, that we're probably the best we've ever been at fire suppression, wildland fire suppression. I mean, in the history of firefighting, I'd say we're pretty darn good. We have our best capability, our most professionally trained responders. We have very good, very, very good prevention programs out there, and very good public awareness and evacuation programs out there. And yet we still had the biggest fire in the history of the state, and it still wiped out 1,063 structures, even though we were feeling pretty good about what we could bring to the table. So, I don't know if there's a conclusion there. It's just, you know, sometimes you might recognize that things are changing. You might say it's, you know, the environmental changes. You might just say it's, you know, the holes in the cheese lined up, right? Listen to our story and you can draw your own conclusions. But, you know, we're feeling pretty good about our capability, and this one grew up and hit us. So here's our story. We're in California. We're just north of Los Angeles. We serve about 1 million residents and just a little under 1,000 square miles. About half our jurisdiction is actually forest. So just the southern half by the beach is the only part of Ventura County that's actually got a lot of people in it. We got 10 cities. We protect a bunch of them, and there's a couple other fire departments that are working with us, and we all work together to provide fire protection in this area. And really, you know, the picture of California is kind of a good one for us because it's really the California Fire Department most of the summer. We spend much of the summer driving around the state fighting fire in various jurisdictions, and then when we have a fire in Ventura County, the state comes to help us. And so it's really a collective, even though I'm a representative of just an individual jurisdiction. We do big fires though in Ventura County. 11 of the top largest fires in California, 3 of them have been in Ventura. So big fires are no stranger to us. However, our day-to-day stats, you know, wouldn't tell that story quite the same way. We have about 150 fires a year in brush fires, but only a very few of them actually grow above 10 acres. And I want to come back to this stat a little later in the presentation. What causes these big fires? And there's a lot of information on this slide, but for those of you who aren't native to California or know what our winds, what causes our wind, see where it says cold on that map up there in the upper right-hand corner? That's where Dave Blankenship is right now. He's in Colorado. And when it snows on Dave, it blows on Vaughn in California. And that's basically what happens is the cold, heavy air pushes down, and through really a geographic anomaly, we get a bunch of wind in California. So it's very predictable. I guess that's the bottom line. The intensity and the duration is all very predictable, and we hear about it from our weather service days in advance.
So, Chief, here we have our first poll question, and again, we encourage the audience members to please respond to the poll. So the question is, does your agency develop incident maps using GIS during special events or significant incidents? And the possible answers there, and just click one, is my agency does not develop incident maps. My agency uses primarily printed mapping products, or my agency employs GIS to provide dynamic map products during the response. So again, does your agency develop incident maps using GIS during special events or for significant incidents? And we'll give them just a moment there to respond. And there you have it. So a majority, my agency employs GIS to provide dynamic map products during the response. That's excellent, excellent. So that's something we often encourage, and a lot of fire chiefs don't understand what the capabilities are to be able to do that and communicate those maps. So again, Chief Vaughn, thank you for coming on today and providing that overview. So we'll turn it back over to you, Chief.
Copy. Just another slide to show, this is a view of Southern California Basin. Los Angeles is down in the lower right, and Santa Barbara is up on that little elbow corner. This is, the red is our fire history. So it really is, a very bloody history. If you want to color it that way in California, you can see the scars, and, Thomas Fire fit right in there, nice and neat. in all the green. So this is our fire history for the last 30 years. It's part of the way we live. So a little bit of an overview on the Thomas Fire itself. Like I said, we were ready for this one. We were given a heads up by the Weather Service. So we staff up when we feel like we're going to have an extreme weather event, and this was predicted to be an extreme weather event. And from a GIS and mapping perspective, we put on field observers, and we give them trucks and we give them iPads, and we have the Ventura product that we use to do real-time mapping, and that product is shared widely, as wide as we can get it to be shared. So the day of the Thomas Fire, we kept everybody home. We staffed up a percentage of engines, and we staffed up overhead, not only for field observing, but also command overhead. We staffed our command vehicle, GIS teams ready, and they're ready to go as well. And so when we have a weather event like this, just from a GIS perspective, we have a command vehicle that we dispatch to the fire when it goes to a second alarm. We also have a GIS van that goes out there with 2 GIS techs in it, one driving, of course. And then we have a couple field observers that we can deploy to actually give good field intel on where the fire is. So that's basically our setup from a GIS perspective when we have a weather event like this. So the wind blew all day, nice and neat, and then at 6:30 at night, when the grass has been drying all day and when the planes don't fly anymore, the fire decided to start. And it started above Santa Paula. And this portion is just a short portion, but I think it'll be telling from a GIS perspective as well. It started very quick and ran very quickly. We all knew it was going to grow into something major. But then we had a second start above, with that second purple arrow up there to the top of Ojai. So the first start gathered about 15 or 20 engines, about 15 engines, and all the overhead went to Santa Paula to deal with the first start. And then the second start hit, and that got another 10 or 15 engines, and then we're almost at the end of our rope right there as far as ability to send engines and virtually no overhead. And we start drawing on aid from the rest of California, like I said earlier. So this thing got up and ran fairly quickly, and it moved into, there's canyons between Santa Paula and Ventura. And you can see the big blue arrows on the right-hand side of the screen. That's the direction of the Santa Ana wind. So it's just following the line of the wind. It skipped across mountaintops and ridge tops, and then burnt out canyons along this way. And we deployed a bunch of resources into these canyons, and most of our overhead was put to work right away, as you can imagine. We had rescues in these canyons. We had, a few hundred people that ended up being trapped because where that red dot is, people were evacuating, and unfortunately, there was an accident. A civilian was killed, and the accident caused a chain reaction and ended up blocking the road and caused most of the people upstream of them in the canyon to be trapped in this area. So our field observers were deployed out here, and their job ended up getting changed to rescue. Most everybody's job got changed that night to rescuing people. We're putting people in fire engines and driving them out of harm's way. We're putting people in horse corrals to shelter them from the fire. We're doing everything we could to get people into a safe area, and all the while we're initiating evacuations in Ventura at this moment. So we know the fire's going, we can see it. Headed to Ventura, our operational forces are in these canyons, and we're starting to line up people in Ventura. And we have a reverse 911, we have a subscription system to notify people, and we have a very good county EOC that helps us do all that. So it's we're very well connected, and we feel like we're very capable on the notification side to get people out of the way. But then the power went out. It burned right through a major power grid line and substation, and the power went out really everywhere almost immediately. So people were really stuck at that point. If they didn't know how to open up the garages and get their cars out of their garage, which happened, we had plenty of people walking at that point, and it just complicated really everything. Gas stations wouldn't work, those types of things. Resources were getting low on fuel. This was a few hours into the incident. Of course, this probably took about 2-3 hours to actually go from the point of origin to Ventura. But that's fairly quick for us as far as time goes. You can see the generic nature of the map. These are actual perimeters that we recorded in GIS, but I want to just call out our shape is just a rough estimate at this point. And that's just what has to be done early in the fire. When you can't get somebody to really give you any detail on where the fire is, you make a rough estimate on where it is. And this was going out on social media. This was going out on our other avenues where we can advertise what's happening with the fire. It ran right down into Ventura, and what I didn't point out in this slide was there was actually a third start right in Ventura proper, and the fire actually merged at that point and then started burning many of the homes that are on the perimeter of Ventura there. About midnight, about 6 hours into it, the fire is 35,000 at this point, and you can see up at the top of the screen there's not much related to mapping at the top, because the resources we couldn't get resources up there. Most of the activity was down in Ventura. Most of the rescue problem was down in Ventura, but we probably lost 300 or 400 homes in the area by the second start up there. And you can see with the progression of the maps, we didn't get much intel from that area at all, just because we were basically overwhelmed at that point from a mapping perspective, from a ground mapping perspective. As the next morning hit, you can see the perimeters kind of changed, becoming more refined, and that's we got a little bit of intel, a little bit of IR intel from the fire, and that helps us draw that perimeter out and essentially into the next morning and probably day 2. And then finally, because this presentation really isn't about it's about mapping the fire. The fire burnt ultimately 280,000 acres, and just kind of I put this up here to just kind of show you the magnitude and the size of the fire relative to all our communities down there. So this isn't, it takes a few hours to drive around this thing. It took about an hour to fly from Fillmore to the top left in a helicopter. So you're talking some major distances. During the course of this fire, as the incident management team took control of situational awareness in the next day, our maps started to get better from a administrative perspective and a fire management perspective. But this fire was still outpacing us, and it would outpace us during the day. And we were getting IR flights in the evening. And ultimately, we were getting frustrated because we weren't getting the situational updates during the day, especially up in the green area where it's forest. And we do have houses up there, and we do have residents in there, and we need to know where this fire is, even though it's not around a major community and can be seen by a foot soldier. So we ended up bringing the MMA aircraft out from Colorado and to fly for us, and Ventura County contracted with it. And we brought it through the system, and we we're able to use that data fairly quickly and import it into our Intera system, and the incident was able to use it. And so we were able to get some better intel once we got some daytime reconnaissance. We ultimately made some good early evacuation decisions on Montecito because we got some good intel on where that thing was in the backcountry. So just a little bit about mapping. Are there any questions on the firefight or the weather, things I've talked about so far? Please feel free to type something in if you like.
So Chief, I got a quick question. So when you start developing this map data and this geospatial data, can you explain, do you use the same data to provide public information, to provide information to CAL FIRE and Cal OES? In other words, is it, the communication of the data? Can you explain how that works?
We do. We use Intera, the Intera product internally for our folks. So every one of our personnel has a subscription to it and can get to it either on their phone or their iPad or a computer. We share that data with our partners in Ventura County. So our EOCs all have the ability to see the map and where the fire is. They can see our CAD system and they can see our map. Our OES system, who does the evacuation, right next to us, at the command post. So they don't use our map to actually send reverse 911s, but they copy it and send it. We also share our entire map to our website, and we can do that fairly quickly with a couple switches and share it out that way. And we also take screenshots of the map and can share it via our Twitter feed. That GIS duo, dynamic duo that I was talking to you about earlier, their job is to refine and support the map. They also support Scout as well, which is the state tool for situational awareness. And so they can copy any and all perimeter information into that system and support both systems. And that's our goal. We're really not about just trying to keep it in our own stovepipe. We're about sharing that intel as widely and as efficiently as we can.
And that's excellent. I think one of the capabilities is that by using, one platform to develop and then share this data, is that when you change your map, the data you're sharing changes as well, so that anybody that has that view has a current real-time map product in front of them and not something that was printed 5 hours ago.
That's right. That's right. And just to bring that to a point, I mean, I'll bring up our normal stats a little later too, when it comes to firefighters, but remember our stats. We have about 150 fires a year. Only about 6 of them or 4 of them or 5 of them, whichever year you want to count, is above 10 acres. And small fires they're not important as far as maps go, only to the public. The public wants to know where a fire is because they see the smoke and they worry immediately, but the firefighters on the ground, it doesn't really raise the awareness of the cities. And so it's a not frequently used tool at this moment. And that's a challenge that we face.
Absolutely.
For the EOCs and things like that, all our supporting players. So this presentation really is about our IA and how we use our FOBs and our GIS. And as I alluded to earlier, we send our folks out in the field, and so they can, with iPads, and we can deploy, we usually do up to 4 FOBs out there if we need to get a map of the fire. Usually it only takes 1, just depends on the size of the fire and how much time it takes them to get around it. And then we have the 2 GIS techs that are supporting us in the background. We have a network of remote cameras that we can also use. And very often we get great news coverage in Ventura County because we're right next to the LA media market. So it's not long before we get a news copter overhead. And our GIS team can actually draw the map from the view from the news copter in many instances, at least a rough start. So they'll take a look before they even leave their desk. If there's something on TV relative to the fire, they'll try to get a quick perimeter around it and then go refine it once they get out there and get some feedback from the field. We also use the MODIS sensing as well, and as I talked about earlier, when we were getting rapid daytime progression on the Thomas fire. I mean, one day I think it burned 100,000 acres in a day, so big fire movement, and we use MODIS as well just to give us a little intel on where that thing is. But that's our IA quiver, so to speak, as far as mapping goes. So we try to put people in the field to map, and then we refine it when we get an IR flight, and that usually comes when a state team comes in to support us. But now we've got a relationship with MMA, and I think we'll be more willing and ready to bring them out more quickly to give us that IA assistance. And that's really what we need. We need to figure out a way to make this really easy, because like I alluded to, it's not a commonly used tool. We have so many fires, you know, one every other day or so during fire season, or one every day during fire season, but you know, they're really not that big. We jump on them fairly quickly and we keep them pretty small. So the big fires where we need to map only happens a few times a year. We have a bunch of input devices. So here's a picture, a screenshot of all our maps that our responders have to deal with. So on the left is my iPhone, a screenshot from my iPhone, an iPad screenshot from one of our field observers on the Thomas fire, showing the Thomas fire incident map, probably a second day. Just a generic shot of Scout on the lower center screen. Our CAD mobile screen is up on the upper right, and then a shot of our CAD map is down on the lower right. We can't today easily put, and I haven't seen it successful, and maybe we've done it once or twice in a test format, but it's a little bit of a lift to get our map into our CAD system. And we're working with our CAD vendor to try to improve that access so that we can get that map in there, as well as, like you said, Mike, it's important to share this in a variety of formats. And we really got to look at the amount of noise that our responders actually have to deal with in the field. So just an overview of our tool, Ventura tool, and David's going to help us with some of the technical aspects if you have questions, and he can definitely be available offline too to answer any questions. And before I get started, you know, we have our reasons for going with Ventura, but I want to be very supportive of virtually every platform that's out there that's trying to improve situational awareness. We want to support each and every one of them, and that's what we advocate for. And so our voice is always to improve SA. It's really not to say one platform is better than the other, but here's our tool and here's how we use it. The primary means of input is on the iPad. All of our engines have iPads on them. So effectively a company officer could do it. We also have a cache of iPads in our communication center, and when we deploy field observers, they go in and they grab an iPad and they head out and they stick it in their unit. And we'll eventually have iPads in almost all of our light fleet as well. So this is our tool of choice, really, when it comes to viewing the map and providing input. This is a view of the public map. So this square right here is actually what our website, we pop it right in on our homepage on our website. So it's a very simple map. It can show what folks need to know, where the fire perimeter is right now. Our Ventura interface has, I count, 7 work areas that we can go to, and I'll just briefly cover each one. This is the plans area, and it's really specific for a sit unit to use electronically, so they can actually edit the map and cut. And it's got a few tools that they can use to gain remote sensing information, gain photographic information from satellite, or edit a little bit more refined tool on edit and exporting, importing and exporting perimeters in and out of the system. So this is intended for a sit unit, folks. What you get when you log in, and you get the operations interface, and up on the upper left, I logged in just to get a screenshot for this presentation. And we've just got a little fire that we had the other night by the river, and that's closed. But the intention is that you can go right to the active incident and click right down, and it zooms right to that perimeter. So it's fairly easy to get to. Just a little look of that operation interface in full bloom. And this is all zoomable, so you get the overview of the incident and the fire history, and where the division breaks are, and where the branch breaks are, and where the perimeters contain, and where it's still open. With the, if you don't know, the red perimeter up the top is the open perimeter, and the black is deemed contained at that point. The X's are dozer line, and the red is, again, fire history. And the little parentheses are division breaks, and that's how we use to break down management of the incident. So very typically, we'll give people an assignment to go to division Oscar and meet their division supervisor at drop point 10, and you can see that's all on the map, and it makes it fairly easy to go find where you're assigned to go and where you're supposed to meet. Ventura also provides us some metrics, and we can see this is a screenshot of all our responses over this past week. I again took this yesterday or day before. Reds are fires and blues are medicals, and we can refine this quite a bit. So there's a lot of control based on area and sector, and whether we met standards or not, but we can drill down fairly efficiently onto what the call was, and see what was the time issue with each call. So that's kind of nice. This is our pre-fire plans, and this was one of our strategies to get some user adoption. And what we wanted to be able to do is share our infrastructure information with our partners. And so we have our pre-fire plan areas. We store a lot of information, so you can see on this screen that there is where there are estimate of numbers of homes, there's potential incident bases, water tanks and gates and things like that. We can all record in this, and we want to be able to share this information. So we record it here and we share this interface. We also provide a training interface, so you can see there's a whole bunch of training incidents in here in this section. And then this is our alert section, and this is a little area where we can create some automatic notifications and really see, really plan for a potential hazard. And the red area that you're looking at is, an analysis by our watershed district on our potential for floods after the Thomas fire has burned through it. David, you want to add anything here?
Sure, thanks, Chief. I think this is an important part of making GIS and situational awareness work, is sort of this unsupervised alerting. And so in this system, in conjunction with the Forest Service and the Department of Interior through the National Interagency Fire Center, we do basically 3 kinds of alerting. We do like well, if there's a fire, you can subscribe to the alert, and any satellite imagery that's or infrared imagery that's captured over that fire, you'll be alerted to, and you can click and just see that. It also shows up in the system. My favorite one is the second kind of alerting, where the systems that are in space and other places from other government agencies are just staring at the ground and looking for infrared detects or thermal anomalies. And so using that sensor data in combination with GIS data, we can say, hey, we've got, one alert or multiple alerts or multiple systems that are alerting, so we can give a competence score in that. And so we can say, okay, here's definitely a thermal event, something that's going on, and just a fancy way of saying probably a new fire. And we can look at the aggregated incidents that everybody in the country knows about and say, is this associated with an incident we already know about? Or is this associated with lightning in the area? Or is this a brand new event that nobody knows about? And so we can give sort of an urgency score to that and say, pay attention to this, pay attention right now because you have a new start and you don't know about it yet. So we love that automatic notification and love being able to stream those heat detections into the map and imagery associated with that into the map. And then the third one in this system is what we would call like a California drought monitor. So we use California data that is related to tree mortality, and we do the same kind of detection when there's a detection in and within like a mile of areas that have high tree mortality or are stricken with drought. Then we can make special alerts to pay attention to those places as they are easier places for fire to get going, sustain, and carry.
Thanks, David. Got about somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes to run this presentation.
And we have our next poll question. So again, audience, please respond to the poll question here. And Chief, I'll follow this up with a couple of questions from the audience as well, because we're getting some coming in as well.
Great.
Is your agency providing a GIS-based common operating picture through mobile devices or a cloud-based service? And so potential answers are, my agency provides paper mapping products, my agency uses GIS map products in the command post or EOC, or my agency provides maps to mobile devices and field units. So again, is your agency providing a GIS-based common operating picture through mobile devices or cloud-based services, which Chief Miller just gave an excellent example of mobile device map by first responders in the field. So wait just a moment there and see what our response is. And we are using digital map products in the EOC and the command post, and a significant number are providing it to mobile devices in the field. So excellent response. So Chief, I'll hit you with a quick question from the audience, and it's discussing the weather and the predictability of the weather. But with weather forecasting and then the expansion of the fire to the northwest, did you have any way to model the fire growth when those changes were forecasted?
We're looking at a system called Wi-Fi right now at a UCSD to do that for us, and I've talked to David about trying to get that capability. So we don't currently have a modeling system. I mean, we use our experience for sure. Like I said, we're very well experienced in that. However, an actual tool to do that, to help with decision support, we're not there yet.
Understood. And then a question from Heather Dean at Cal OES. Are you using Esri Collector or the Ventura application in the field for your field observers?
Right now, the Ventura application in the field is what we use to collect data. We can use both, though. But we don't have the Esri Collector is not as widely used as we'd like quite yet, but we're working on that.
Okay, understood.
David, Chief, just to tag on to that, I think an important marker of a good situational awareness system is being able to accept inputs from any number of devices. So to Heather's question, it's important that any system that does this kind of thing be able to accept from Esri Collector or Survey 123 or a third-party app or even Ventura, but it doesn't matter. I mean, like, all that matters is situational awareness. The same lesson is true of dissemination. If I was queen for a day, maybe everybody would use Ventura, but that's not the important part. The important part is whatever Bond's field crews know about the fire, Cal OES and everybody has immediately.
Agree. Yeah. Exactly. Thanks, David. And Chief, we'll turn it back over to you to continue on with the presentation.
All right. Next. Aha. Hang on. We have some. All right. I'd like to just do an assessment of where we are to date in the last 10 years or so. And don't take this as a gripe, take this as maybe of a call to action. And as I introduced myself this morning, I asked for the IT folks and the GIS folks to just listen and think about, what I have to say here, because it is, I think it's telling. And this is the screenshots you see on the right are a very innovative video and vision that came from CAL FIRE as they stood up their situational awareness system. And I'm just guessing, is in my very poor memory, 2008, 2009, they used to call it ladders, and then it became NICS, and now it's morphed into Scout, which is, but this video is out there on YouTube. It's dated 2014, and they call it NICS then, but you'll hear them say in the video ladders, which is the older CAL FIRE name. And what it was professing is situational awareness, borderless, info directly out of the field to command centers, to, decision makers. And this was 10 or so years ago, this vision came out, and the system was being developed and essentially was developed to support it then. This is my friend Mark Vontillo, 2017, and he is, briefing on a paper map. These are my friends in the Thomas Fire Sit unit, and they are using, they have the big board laid out. They have the big giant map board laid out for field observer input on the big map. Same old way that we've been doing business for a long, long time. And then again, this isn't a slam, this is an assessment. A public information map that is, earnestly developed for sure, but it's probably hard for the uninformed citizen to read it. And all my friends at the Thomas Fire being briefed in the morning with a paper IAP. About 1,500 of them sitting there. And I really want to know, we don't have a collective plan for electronically distributing incident information today, and we don't have an interoperable plan for electronic access to maps. I mean, we are developing systems, and Scout's one, Intera's one, but the collective is not. The collective vision hasn't been acted on yet, and so we're still sitting there with paper. And this really adds up to, if they're getting paper and they're getting briefed on paper, then how important is the electronic work that we're doing? That's the question. I'm going to play a short video, and it's about 2 minutes. This is something we had in Ventura in 2013. And this is a service we called range and bearing. This was probably this is better than what we had today, because this was remote sensing from an aircraft, and we could actually import it into our interface in a matter of minutes. So the timeline of the flight and the sensing and then the import is down on the lower right. So it's a speeded up video. They lay down a grid. They're not in service anymore. I don't even think they're flying anymore, but they basically would fly fires, and we could see a picture, an IR picture fairly quickly. Here's one coming in from this fire, and it's a fairly cold fire. I think it was the Chariot fire or something like that. And shortly after that, the perimeter comes in as well. And it's all without the people on the ground having to do it, which is, I guess my point, is that it's done for them. Here's the perimeter in a matter of 22 minutes, we got, of the plane coming on scene, we've got a perimeter on our fire. And we've got some kind of IR that indicates where the fire is, which I think is really valuable. Here's another shot of another fire that we flew during this summer of 2013, and it shows where the fire's hot, and this is incredibly valuable to incident managers. And if we can get this information today, we can drill down and zoom in and see where the fire is impacting residents and change the background, of course, and see what's there so we can try to deal with it. We have so many inputs, like I have been alluding to, from the drones, and we have the MMA aircraft down there in the lower left. We have cameras, we have scout, we have collectors. But in a rapidly advancing fire, in those 6 fires that really move, or that grow over 10 acres, maybe 1 or 2 of them, or get up and really kick your rear end, it's tough. It's still tough for ground personnel to gather intel because they're busy. They're busy doing things. And the Thomas fire was, and you saw it, was very rapid, too rapid to collect it. We couldn't drive around it fast enough to get good intel. You just had to do a guess on where this fire was from the ground. And this shot here is just to show you where your field users are. They're protecting structures. They're away from the engine. They're not in a position to really receive that intel. And probably from a small scale, the intel that they need is right in front of them. But from a big scale, you can see that they can't see anything except for what's in front of them. And so that's really the dogma that I think we're in, is how do we provide them the picture in a way that they can understand it and see it and get at it when they need it. It's still a challenge for us. We had 800 fire trucks on the Thomas fire, and none of them really were connected with each other. Agencies had their own CAD, but they couldn't talk to each other electronically. Each of them had a computer in their rig, but they don't talk. So I'm suggesting that a place for a fusion of information is probably that mobile computer that's sitting inside each cab. They're familiar with it. They use it 10, 15 times a day, and we can make it, if we can deliver the intel they need to that place, it may be better, and it may be useful to them. What we're trying to do in Ventura is speed up the planning cycle a little bit. And, as you can see from my example of the Thomas fire and the story of the Thomas fire, we need to receive and deploy many, many resources very, very quickly. And getting them pieces of paper is not going to work. We have to get them a map and their assignment and the incident action plan and all those things in the moment. They need to see it in an appropriate format for them so they can understand their work assignment and understand their situation. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. We can do it verbally over the radio. We can do it face to face on the ground. That's the way it's done today, but I think we could do better. We took a stab at this idea of rapid check-in and access to our situational awareness tool by creating this card with a URL on it and a login and a password. The plan was to hand it out to guest resources, but it hasn't really taken hold at the user level yet, and so it doesn't go out. And you can see, even in the Thomas fire, we're still really hamstrung with our ability to share data and share information. And so we go back very quickly to what we know, which is paper. And I think that's the challenge that's upon us as managers and leaders of the fire service right now, is to state clearly what we want, and then ask the technologists out there to give us a hand getting there. And we really have to keep stating it. Our users have to ask for it. Our field people have to ask for it. And I think, it's all this technology is very possible. It's there. I know that there's a lot of IT folks and GIS people on this line thinking, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And that's all good. But it's, moving this machine is tough. And so my request is, hear what I have to say, hear my story, and just take the opportunity that if it comes to you to make an improvement in the system.
And we have our next poll question, and the last of the series here. So what resource is your department currently using to perform GIS incident mapping? The answers are the agency is not performing GIS incident mapping. The agency uses an outside agency or vendor for GIS support, or your agency has internal personnel that provide GIS services. So what resource is your department currently using to perform GIS mapping? And by far, the majority agencies have personnel within the agency that provides GIS services. So that's excellent. That's obviously the goal for our public safety agencies. So Chief, turning back over to you. A couple more slides there and we'll wrap it up with a couple questions.
So I just want to take a moment. We can't talk about the Thomas fire without mentioning the loss of Corey. That was definitely the hardest hit that the fire gave us, for sure. So please remember him. Looking forward, like I said, the commanders have to be asking for these maps and this to be done for the people to do it. Otherwise, they'll get reassigned. And sometimes they just have to, and it's the right thing to do. But most days, the commanders aren't asking for the electronic map to be broadcast and things like that. And then we're talking lower level divisions, branches, that type of thing, or even incident commanders on small fires. And so it's got to be a priority for it to happen. Public sharing has to be accelerated. Commanders have to understand that the public is getting information, whether they're sending it or not. And that is, been made very clear to all of us who are watching social media grow and explode over the last 5 years. So information is out there. It's up to you whether you're going to correct it or not. An interoperable solution has got to be easy and simple and available to everybody. And we're not there, but we can get there. We need to exert more energy as leaders to do it. So that's my presentation. I really appreciate your attendance and your attention, and I'm glad to answer any questions that have come through the system.
Thanks, Chief. And you have some contact or some informational links there, and we'll again provide that in an email that goes out to the attendees. I also want to remind everyone that our users conference starts July 9th in San Diego, July 9th in San Diego, and come spend some time with 20,000 of your best friends. But preceding the users conference, we hold the National Security and Public Safety Summit. So it's a 2-day pre-conference activity. Excellent group, excellent networking opportunities. Chief Miller will be presenting there as well. So please, if you haven't made arrangements to attend it, come join us in San Diego, July 7th through 10th. And so we, again, have a bit of data. Are we getting that from typically manned aircraft, or was UAS or drones involved?
On the Thomas, there was a UAS, and the California National Guard provided their Predator drone, and they were giving, it was infrared data. They were providing that to the incident, and they were providing video as well. And the video I showed from 2013 was manned aircraft, and that was in a more traditional remote sensing sense.
Understood. And David, this one may be a little more in your.
Oh, good. Thank you.
So on the alert services you were describing, what alert services are you providing in your alert layer? Is a question from Cal Fire.
Yeah, so that is available for in this context, in a wildfire context. We're providing emails and text services to alert based on, it's an automated system that looks for heat, looks for those GIS intersections, queries back through the federal layer, like all the wildcat, like South Ops and North Ops stuff, to say, do we know about a fire, do we not? And so it gives the confidence. It sends it just about any way that you want it, and it gives you a map and a location for those things, as well as when you have an incident that's going, like even when the Thomas Fire was in its first couple of days, if there's satellite imagery from Worldview 3 or Sentinel or Spot or some of those, it will stream that in or show you a picture of that type of thing. So it'll use thermal anomalies in conjunction with GIS mapping, in conjunction with CAD data to sort of inform you of what's happening.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Chief Miller, I certainly want to extend my thanks to you for spending the last hour with us, giving us an overview of your use of GIS during the response to one of the most significant incidents in California's history. So again, we appreciate your time. There are several questions that we did not get to, and we will email answers either from Chief Miller, David, or myself, whichever is most appropriate, and get those answers out to you. So again, thank you for joining Esri's Public Safety webinar series. Have a good day.